Hello folks, welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. This time we have something very serious and it's to do with this movie that's going to be released next month, Ajmer 92. Now what amazes me about these movies is whether it's the Kashmir Files, the Kerala story and now Ajmer 92. When it was happening, total blackout, press, media, newspapers, magazines, not a word anywhere, and politicians, not one word anywhere. Their silence was deafening, believe me. I can't understand how this was allowed to remain quiet for so long. Because well, what can I say? You may think it's small, but it isn't. Particularly when you realize that it happens among us. It's happened to me 2 or 3 times. Now you think, among my servants, for instance, the Nepali, his daughter didn't come home from school one day. And he went mad looking, police, this, that and the other. And finally he found his daughter, who was about 10 years old at the time, maybe 11, at the teacher's house. What was she doing there? She didn't know what she was doing there. Then another servant. Their daughter disappeared. She must have been about 12. Hue and cry was raised. Police were informed, this, that and the other. And finally, even though she was missing in South Delhi, she was found somewhere between Red Fort and the Old Delhi station. One wonders why. What was she doing there? How did she get there? And then, this Muslim gentleman whom I'd known for 25 odd years does azan in my house and then starts shouting at me, calling me a kafir and abusing me and saying, you guys, you bow to idols and so on. I say, that's my business. None of your business. Now, I mean, this is somebody I'd known 25 years. And he comes out with something like this? And he's not an uneducated person. He's a doctor. Would you believe that? I was shocked. And another person in this colony, this housing colony where I live, years ago, his 6-year-old child disappeared. They never found her. One wonders where she went or what happened to her. Now, as I said earlier, when you start joining the dots, the picture emerges. These are individual tales. Now, what was Ajmer all about? The story is beginning to come out now. It started off with casual friendship. It became closer friendship. Invited to people's homes. Soft drinks with a drug in it. The person is knocked out. They're taken to a room, pictures taken in compromising position while he's still unconscious, and then the blackmailing begins. Now it's not just girls, but boys also. You see, the first attempt at this in Ajmer was apparently a boy, influential in the town, probably rich also. He was subjected to this, taken to their farmhouse and plied with soft drinks. Because in this case, we know it was a Muslim family, so obviously no alcohol. Supposedly no alcohol, with a drug in it. And that's where the photographs and so on and the blackmailing began. Now, whether it was political or whether it was monetary or business, that we don't really know even to this day, because much of it has been suppressed. Who by? When you get Rahul Gandhi going abroad and saying, press freedom is at stake, it's in danger. Maybe you should ask him who is responsible for this press blackout. Whether it is Kashmir Files, whether it is Ajmer Files, or Kerala Files? Maybe he should be made to answer. And not with when the time comes. The time is now. Now what's shocking? You see, most of us have come across one case or individual cases. But this one was wholesale. Kashmir Files, okay, thousands were murdered, but no FIRs lodged because the police refused to register them. You see, you understand the cover-up. Now you see 92, Ajmer. Who was the chief minister? There was none. It was president's rule. See the pattern. Kashmir Files, Farooq Abdullah resigned, there was president's rule, and then mayhem. Here again, it was a Mr. Shekhawat who was chief minister, he resigned, there was president's rule, and this comes out. And what was this? It was probably one of the biggest sex scandals known in this country. And it involved girls in classes 10 to 12. Now you think, girls who don't even know much about this world, and first one gets entrapped. Same way, farmhouse, soft drinks with drugs, followed by gang rape. And they take photographs while all this is going on to ensure silence. Their families won't utter a word, and she won't utter a word. Then everything else begins. How? She is then told to bring a couple of her friends. And then those three now bring 2 or 3 more. And so the game goes on. Result, in the end, about 250, maybe more, school and college girls were entrapped in this way. And nobody would open their mouths because of the fear of shame and so on. Now you think, and who are they? These were highly politically connected people. And where was it operated from? Where were these politically connected people from? Would you believe they worked in the dargah, or their parents worked in the dargah in Ajmer? You know the big one, Chishti? That dargah? It's difficult to believe, and yet it happened. I mean, the blackmail, the sexual exploitation, mind-boggling. This is like, if you remember a few years ago, a racket was unearthed, child trafficking in Belgium, in the basement of a Roman Catholic church. And this is being done by the children. And I say children, they'd be 25, 30 years old maybe at the time, of people who were serving in the dargah. Now, you see, this is, originally it started off love jihad, entrapment. And it burgeoned into a probably trafficking. Or girls for favors, political favors. I wouldn't be at all surprised if somewhere there was a political connection, they were supplying girls for political parties. It wouldn't surprise me if that was found. And this is what happens. Now we begin to believe maybe Arab sheikhs coming to places like Hyderabad, marrying a girl of 9 or 10, divorcing her next day and flying back, having paid a hefty sum to the family of that girl. And these are the things that we tolerate in this country? Why? I mean, don't these people have any feelings? Don't think it's great fun? Now all these girls were Hindus. Not one a Muslim, not one was even Christian. Why are Muslims going so how shall I put it, single-mindedly after Hindus. Why are they destroying Hindu culture, Hindu life? Why are they able to do so? Very simple reason. Are parents in touch with their children? No. Do they know about Hinduism? No. We have not been allowed to learn about Hinduism since 1947. Sorry, 1950. This is Nehru. And that's where it all began. When he puts into the constitution that we can learn about Islam and Christianity, but not about Hinduism. Now, if we cannot learn about it in schools, colleges, and so on, where do we learn? The only place left is either the temples or at home from parents and grandparents. But children don't have time to even listen to them. Why? Western society says, to hell with parents, we make our own lives. We don't care about our own heritage. Because even parents and grandparents, well, grandparents may be an exception, but parents, for instance, do not follow Hindu traditions. They follow what is convenient for them. There is a total lack of integrity or honesty, which was encouraged by successive Congress governments in the center. That's where the black economy took place, or took off. So much so that 80% of our economy was black, untaxed and so on. And of course, when Modi tries to stomp all that out and make it a legal white economy, that's when the opposition starts getting together. Why? They want a black economy. Anyway, the main thing is, why was all this kept from us? Why was it suppressed so horrendously? Not a squeak anyway. And then we get the opposition people who say the press is being muscled. The press has no freedom. I mean, a person who is accused of espionage and passing state secrets to enemies or outsiders or foreign governments, they should be allowed to carry on like this? Look, whatever freedom you have goes with responsibility. That's the other side of the same coin. You want freedom? You have to accept responsibility too. If you step out of that responsibility zone, you deserve to be brought down with 10 tons of bricks from a horrible great height, landing on top of you. You deserve it. In the same way, look, what do parents do? Children are brought up not by parents but by ayahs. What traditions or what culture do they inculcate in those little minds? Their own. Not yours or mine, but their culture, their way of thinking. Now those nannies or ayahs may be Christian, they may be Muslim, they may be anybody. You see, from an early age, they get this exposure to other religions, not our own. And because we know nothing about our own religion, you get things like Ajmer Files, or Ajmer 92, as they call it. I mean, Ajmer is not such a big city or town. You think 250 girls entrapped in that one little town. How many would remain untouched or unsmeared? And how long did this continue? We still don't know. 250 we've heard of. How many more were there which we haven't heard of? Or whom we know nothing about? Because they're too frightened. And I'll tell you, a lot of these groups, they use fear as a weapon. In my own case, I'll tell you, in our housing colony, all the scrap dealers, old newspapers, scrap, brass, irons, things like this, were all Hindus. I remember about 35 years ago, a little man, a Hindu, who's been there for 10 or 15 years before that. One day he comes to me and says, I'm going to my village. I'll be back in about a month, 6 weeks. Of course, he never came back. Why? All the scrap dealers around in our housing colony are now Muslims. And now I understand that uncertainty or that odd look in his eyes. He was frightened out. There's a cobbler, not far, just outside the housing colony. A real craftsman. His workmanship was something else. And he didn't charge very much. One day he disappeared. I was told he's gone to his village. He never came back. That position was taken by another Muslim, whose workmanship was pretty awful, and he charged 5 times as much. You see, fear of exposure, fear of, how shall I put it, life and limb, not just for them, but also their families. And they don't think twice about using that particular tool to keep people quiet. And people are afraid. Because where would those girls find any husbands? How do you get them married? Where? Certainly not in and around Rajasthan. They'd have to look far and wide for husbands. A lot of them don't find them. What happens to their lives? Now the alternative is adopt Islam, marry one of these. And God help them if they do. Now, these are so many problems are created under the name of love jihad. I know you heard this before, I've used it before, but we don't understand its full ramifications. It's not just, how shall I put it, the power over people. It is a war against Hindus to try and eradicate Hindus by reducing their population. The replacement pattern goes out. For every one who is taken out of the marriage market, it's a gain of 2 for them. I keep saying this, but people seem to think it's a joke. It isn't. And then you've got all these illegal migrants coming in. You think that's funny? Yeah, no. There's hardly any. You look at Delhi. The demography has changed to such an extent. It's unbelievable. And yet, nobody listens. Nobody even thinks about it. We're being taken over. Where do we go? 1 billion Hindus. Where do we go? Can we all go to the US or Europe or Russia? No. So where do we go? It's time to get up and do something about it. Remember Karnataka? Understand that. Note the pattern. Kashmir Files. President's rule, massacres. This one, President's rule, sex scandal. Along with blackmail for a whole lot of other favors, political or business. It's time we woke up. Let us not remain as ostriches with our heads buried in the sand. I don't see anything wrong. I don't see any problem. As I said, I was unfortunately very secular in my outlook until the day the guy comes and starts abusing me in my home. I'm sorry, I take exception to that. And it seems, unless it happens to all of you and you and you in your own homes, you're not going to even pay attention. You're still not going to look after your own children. You're not going to teach them about our religion. Just saying, read the Gita, it doesn't mean anything. Someone has to be there to explain to them what it means. If you remember, even in the Mahabharata, Lord Krishna was there explaining it all to Arjuna. Why you have to fight? Fight for what? If there's something wrong, you have to stand up, and it is your duty to fight. Now, I know very little about Hinduism. Why? Because nobody taught me. There was nowhere I could learn about it. Now I'm told I can read the Gita. I find that difficult. Because of my advancing age, if you like, my eyesight is not what it used to be, nor are my brains functioning as well as they used to 20, 30, 40 years ago. Also, who is there to explain to me the nuances of what each thing means? Also, each thing may have half a dozen different meanings, depending on the context. Is there anybody who can explain that to me? No. Why? Probably because they don't exist. This was the Congress and Nehruvian policy from 1950 onwards, to wipe Hinduism away out of India. There's no teachers, nothing. Muslims and Christians learn all the way from school, in churches, in mosques, in madrasas. Where do we learn? Suddenly when temple lands and things like this are claimed by the Waqf board, then we begin to understand, what is this Waqf board? Where did it come from? What does it mean? How many of us knew, for instance, that the Waqf board can claim anybody's land and it becomes theirs? They don't have to show any evidence, no paperwork, nothing. You and I try to prove something, God knows how many years it may take and how many papers we have to show to prove it. But they don't. If they say this is ours, it's theirs. Whose policy was this? This was Narasimha Rao, 1995. Places of Worship Act. You see a lot of temples. Well, you don't see the temple, but you see the mosque built on top of them. And yet, 1991, Narasimha Rao froze that as per August 15, 1947. You can't do anything. Fortunately, it is now being redressed. There's so much that the present government is trying to do, but there's so much opposition. Why? Because they want to maintain status quo, so that they can continue with whatever they're doing. A good example of that is Karnataka. The moment the Congress government comes in, first it reintroduces the 4% quota for Muslims, and then the anti-conversion law which the BJP government had brought in is repealed. So now Muslims and Christians can go berserk. They can do what they like to make people convert to Islam or Christianity. Again, where do Hindus go? Tamil Nadu has been totally averse to Hindus, Brahmins in particular. Certainly since the 1970s, a Brahmin could never get a job anywhere in government in Tamil Nadu. Why? Are they not people? Are they not citizens of India? More important, when the Constitution guarantees equality, why are they less equal? Why are they penalized? And why are they not given minority status? I forgot. Where the Congress governments have been concerned since 1947, the only minorities are Muslims, no others. Now, ignorance, for instance. How many girls know that even if there is a marriage, it has to be registered? Otherwise, they're not married. At best, they're still his mistress. More important, you go to tribal areas, or SC, ST, or Dalit areas. What were they doing in the south, for instance? In the meat trade, most of those involved in slaughtering animals were Dalits. Now, with a large Muslim population there, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, they started telling these guys, look, it's not halal meat, so we can't buy it from you. Whatever meat you have is waste. But if you convert to Islam, then it becomes halal, you can. We can do business. So they convert to Islam. There's one way they convert people towards Islam. You go to scheduled caste or tribal, SC, ST or tribal areas. The lies they spread it, well look, this land belongs to the Waqf board. You can't stay here, you'll be thrown out of here unless you adopt Islam. They do, they have no choice. They don't know where would they go. Then there's the other ploy, marrying tribals. And once they've got their land, they either throw the girl out or kill her if she objects. We've heard of one or two of these examples where a girl has been killed and chopped into pieces and thrown about. One or two maybe. What about the others whom we've never heard about? How many are there? How many times has it happened? How many times must it happen before we say enough is enough? Before all of us get up and off our behinds and do something and say, look, this is not good enough. 2. Illegal migrants. Why are they allowed in here? Because they're all Muslims. All those who come from Bangladesh are Muslims. That is what the CAA and NCR were against. There's some identification who they are, send them back. Delhi alone has something like 1.5 to 2 million of those Bangladeshis. Now whether they're Bangladeshis or Rohingyas, they're all Muslims. How do they get here? Busloads come out of West Bengal, bursting at the seams. They can go to Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir, UP, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and the buses go back empty. Where have these been palmed off to? Who's helping them? And then you get trainloads of people going all over the place. Now they get to certain stations, put up a mazar, or what looks like a so-called Muslim grave, and say, this is a dargah property, or Waqf board property. And they start a whole colony around that place. Take over the station. You see Haldwani, for instance, same thing. They've all encroached on railway land. But they've been there 10, 15 years. About 40 or 50,000 families living there. And the Supreme Court gives them a stay order. You can't evict them. Why? They may encroach on public property or railway land. Nobody else can. Why? As I said, are Muslims more equal than others? Or are Hindus less equal? Why? Is this what the Constitution guarantees? If you remember, if you've seen my video on the Talibanization of Afghanistan, one of those Taliban people said in an interview that India was a work in progress. You begin to understand today. But do you understand? Do you care? No. You think I've lived my life, it's not going to bother me. It's going to affect you, it's going to affect your children, your grandchildren, and their future generations. Like it or not, it is already here. You've got a little bit of time, maybe a couple of years to do something about it. If you don't, well, the time will have gone. You've got to help. Now, I'll give you an example of the CAA and NCR, the effect it began to have until the stir caused by Congress and other opposition parties stopped it or put it in limbo. The person who used to collect the trash from people's houses, one day he comes to me and says, "Sir, from next month onwards, you give it to this man." And I said, "Bhai, what's the matter?" He said, "I'm going home." And where is that? Bangladesh. He was an illegal migrant from Bangladesh who'd been here for 4 or 5 years, making a lot of money. And he sold this franchise of this garbage collection in a housing colony to another man who claimed to be from Assam. Probably another illegal migrant who'd been in Assam for maybe 10 or 15 years. Now you see the scale of all this and how they managed to weave their way into our society. And we don't even know about it. Why? Because we refuse to join the dots. We see them as isolated incidents. They're not. They're all integrated into one pattern. Please wake up, folks, and don't let another Kashmir or another Ajmer or another Kerala story take root again. Please, let's get our act together. Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks. And please do not sit on your behind. Get up and do something. Well, I hope you like this one. It's a very serious one. I hope I've managed to get something across to you folks. Because this is not just in this country. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in Europe. And whether they like it or not, either they legislate and drive them out, or it will happen. Now their populations are much smaller. The countries are much smaller. It doesn't take long. Here it's taken 70 odd years. It may not take much longer. We don't have that much time. So please, spread it among your friends, your relatives, your groups. And please go out and have a look at this movie, Ajmer 92. You'll begin to understand a whole lot of things. That love jihad is not an isolated thing. It fans out into a whole lot of other things. Because it's not just sex and removing Hindu girls from their families, but there's blackmail, both business blackmail, there's also political blackmail, all sorts of favors, whether it's just sex or whether it's political or business favors. A whole lot of things are intertwined in this. And we just don't know because the press says nothing. And the media says even less. Total blackout. Until 30 years later. It's too late then. So please spread this across to all your friends, your groups. Ask them to spread it on. And please press the subscribe button also. You get all these videos. Thank you, folks. See you next time.